The Friday night rush at the Harbor Flame was a living thing, breathing in the salty air from the marina and exhaling heat, laughter, and the sharp scent of garlic butter. Plates clattered in rhythmic urgency, servers slipped between tables with rehearsed grace, and the pianist in the corner tried valiantly to keep the mood elegant despite the growing roar of conversation. Elena thrived in this chaos. It was honest work, predictable in its unpredictability. People came hungry and left satisfied. Most nights, that was enough. She adjusted the strap of her apron and balanced 3 plates along her arm, weaving through the dining room. The restaurant overlooked the dark water, yachts bobbing like distant constellations beneath strings of golden lights. Wealth came here to unwind. Deals were whispered over wine, anniversaries toasted with champagne. And occasionally, egos arrived louder than the tide. The door swung open with more force than necessary. A gust of cool evening air swept in along with 3 men in sharply cut suits. Their shoes were polished to mirror shine, their watches glinting under the chandeliers. They didn't wait to be greeted, they surveyed the room like investors evaluating property. Mia, the newest hostess, stepped forward with a practiced smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. Do you have a reservation?" The one in the center didn't answer immediately. He removed his sunglasses slowly, even though the sun had set an hour ago. His gaze lingered on Mia long enough to make her shift her weight. "Adrian Volkov," he said at last, as if that were the reservation. The name rippled outward in quiet recognition. A couple at the bar exchanged glances. One of the bartenders straightened instinctively. Mia swallowed. "Of course, Mr. Volkov. Right this way." Elena caught the flicker of uncertainty in Mia's eyes and felt a small knot tighten in her stomach. She had heard stories about Adrian Volkov, charity gala appearances, nightclub headlines, business school accolades framed by whispers of reckless behavior. The son of Viktor Volkov. The heir to the empire. Table 12, the best view in the house, was cleared within seconds. Elena approached with water glasses just as Adrian leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms across the backrests as if claiming territory. His friends were already laughing too loudly, their energy sharp and invasive. "Welcome to the Harbor Flame," Elena said evenly. "My name is Elena. I'll be taking care of you tonight." Adrian's eyes traveled slowly from her face down to her name tag and back again. "Elena," he repeated, testing the syllables. "Tell me, Elena, do you always look this serious, or is that just for me?" One of his friends snickered. "I look professional for all my guests," she replied, placing the water glasses down with steady hands. "Can I start you with drinks?" "Surprise me," Adrian said. "Something expensive. Make it worth my time." His friend chimed in. "And bring a bottle for the table. The best you've got." Mia returned with menus, her fingers trembling slightly as she handed one to Adrian. He didn't take it. Instead, he let his hand brush against hers deliberately. "You're new," he observed. "Yes, sir," Mia answered softly. He tilted his head. "You don't have to call me sir." Elena stepped closer, placing herself subtly between them. "Our sommelier recommends the 2015 Bordeaux," she interjected smoothly. "It pairs beautifully with the ribeye." Adrian's gaze shifted back to Elena, amusement dancing behind his eyes. "Are you always this protective of good wine?" she replied. "Absolutely." His friends laughed again, but this time the laughter carried a faint edge. Adrian's smile sharpened. As the night deepened, so did his behavior. Each time Mia approached the table, his comments grew more pointed. "You'd look better without that uniform," he murmured when she refilled his glass. "Careful," one of his friends joked. "She might charge extra for that." Mia's cheeks burned crimson. She avoided eye contact, focusing on the tablecloth. Elena watched from across the room, her jaw tightening. She had worked here for 4 years. She had seen arrogance, impatience, drunken flirtation. But there was a line between foolish and cruel. Adrian was stepping over it with polished shoes. When Mia returned to the service station, she exhaled shakily. "I can handle it," she whispered before Elena could speak. "You shouldn't have to," Elena replied. At table 12, Adrian snapped his fingers, not loudly, but deliberately enough to cut through the music. "Another bottle," he called. "And bring it yourself this time." Elena approached instead of Mia. "I asked for her," Adrian said, irritation flashing. "She's busy," Elena answered calmly. "What else can I get for you?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You think you're in charge here? I'm in charge of this section. And if I decide I don't like your service, then I'll gladly find you somewhere else to dine." The audacity of the statement hung in the air. One of his friends muttered, "She's got nerve." Adrian's lips curved slowly. "I like nerve." Mia returned with the bottle before Elena could stop her. As she leaned in to uncork it, Adrian's hand shot out, catching her wrist. It happened fast, but not fast enough to be unseen. Mia froze. Relax, Adrian murmured. I don't bite. Alina's body moved before her mind fully processed it. She stepped forward and placed her hand firmly over his, prying his fingers loose. Let her go, she said quietly. The room seemed to inhale and forget how to exhale. Adrian's grip loosened, but his gaze hardened. Careful, he warned. Elena guided Mia gently away, positioning herself squarely in front of him. Your behavior is inappropriate, she stated, her voice carrying just enough to reach nearby tables. You will treat our staff with respect. And if I don't? His tone dropped, dangerous and low. Then you'll leave. Silence crashed down heavier than any shout. His friends shifted uncomfortably. One whispered, Adrian. He stood slowly, towering over her. The chandelier light caught the cold edge in his expression. You have no idea who you're talking to, he said. Elena met his gaze without blinking. A customer who is no longer welcome. A fork clattered somewhere in the distance. For a heartbeat, something unreadable flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps even reluctant admiration, but pride smothered it. You just cost this place more than you earn in a year, he said softly. Maybe, she replied, but you don't get to cost her dignity. Mia stood behind Elena now, eyes shimmering but chin lifted slightly higher than before. Adrian grabbed his jacket from the chair with sharp, controlled movements. This isn't over. No, Elena agreed calmly. It's finished. He turned and strode toward the exit, his friends scrambling after him. The door slammed shut behind them, rattling the glass panels. For several long seconds, the restaurant remained suspended in stunned quiet. Then, from a table near the window, someone began to clap. Another joined in. Within moments, the dining room filled with applause, not loud and wild, but steady and sincere. Elena's pulse pounded in her ears as she forced herself to breathe evenly. Only when the noise softened did her hands begin to tremble. Mia stepped forward and hugged her unexpectedly. Thank you, she whispered. Elena closed her eyes briefly. No one gets to treat you like that. Outside, beyond the glow of the marina lights, a distant engine hummed to life on a private yacht bearing the Volkov crest. But inside the harbor flame, for one fragile moment, dignity had won. By the next afternoon, the harbor flame felt different. Not quieter, if anything, the lunch crowd was thicker than usual, but charged, like the air before a summer storm. Word of the confrontation had traveled faster than any social media post. In a city where wealth moved in tight circles, stories about the Volkov name did not stay contained for long. Elena tried to focus on polishing the wineglasses behind the bar, holding each one up to the light to check for smudges. Her reflection looked calm, composed. Only the slight tightness around her eyes betrayed the restless night she'd had. She hadn't regretted what she'd done, not for a second, but she understood consequences. Powerful families rarely accepted humiliation quietly. Mia hovered nearby, pretending to reorganize the reservation book for the third time. Do you think he'll actually do something? She whispered. Elena set a glass down gently. If he does, we'll handle it. You're not scared. Elena considered the question honestly. I am, she admitted. But being scared doesn't mean being wrong. Before Mia could respond, a low vibration rippled through the floorboards. At first it felt like distant construction, just another city noise. Then the vibration deepened into a rhythmic thunder that made the hanging lights tremble. Several customers looked up from their meals. The pianist faltered mid-note. The sound grew louder, closer, until the windows began to hum. Elena turned toward the marina just as a massive shadow swept across the glass facade. Conversations dissolved into murmurs. Someone near the entrance exclaimed, "Is that a helicopter?" It descended with deliberate precision toward the open stretch of dock beside the restaurant. Matte black, sleek, powerful. The downdraft sent napkins skittering across patio tables outside, chairs scraping as startled diners rushed back indoors. On its side, emblazoned in silver lettering, was the unmistakable insignia of the Volkov Group. Elena's stomach tightened. The helicopter touched down smoothly, blades still spinning in controlled fury. Through the glass, she saw the door open. A tall figure stepped out first. Viktor Volkov moved with a quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. His silver hair was combed back flawlessly despite the wind. He wore a charcoal overcoat tailored to perfection, the fabric barely shifting in the gusts. Even from a distance, he radiated command, the kind earned through decades of calculated decisions and ruthless discipline. Behind him, stepping down more cautiously, was Adrian. He wasn't smiling today. The helicopter blades slowed gradually, though the sound still filled the air like an approaching verdict. Inside, the restaurant doors opened before anyone had time to decide whether they should. Victor entered without hesitation. The room seemed to rearrange itself around him. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Waitstaff instinctively straightened their posture. Elena stepped away from the bar and met him halfway across the dining room. Up close, Victor's presence was even more striking. His eyes were a pale, sharp gray, observant, analytical. They landed on her and did not waver. "You are Elena Morales," he said, his voice calm but resonant enough to carry across the room without being raised. "Yes," she replied evenly. "You dismissed my son from your establishment." I asked a disruptive guest to leave. A faint shift in his expression, almost imperceptible, suggested approval rather than anger. Adrian stepped up beside his father but kept a slight distance, as though uncertain of his position. Victor glanced at him. "Is that an accurate description of last night?" A long pause followed. The entire restaurant held its breath. "Yes," Adrian said at last. His voice lacked its usual swagger. "I crossed a line." The admission seemed to surprise even him. Victor turned back to Elena. "Do you know what most managers would have done in your position?" "Look the other way," she answered. "Correct." His gaze sharpened. "And do you know why?" "Because they're afraid of losing money. Or influence," he added. "Or access." Elena folded her hands calmly in front of her apron. "I was more concerned about losing my team's respect." A subtle silence settled between them, heavier than the earlier tension. Victor studied her not as a waitress now, but as a variable in an equation he hadn't expected. "I built my company from a single shipping warehouse," he said slowly. "Do you know what I valued most in my early managers?" "Profit," she guessed. He shook his head faintly. "Loyalty. Not to me. To their people. If a leader cannot protect those beneath them, they have no right to lead." Mia watched from behind the bar, eyes wide. Victor gestured toward Adrian. "My son has been surrounded by agreement his entire life. Agreement breeds arrogance." Adrian shifted, jaw tightening, but he didn't interrupt. "You," Victor continued, "were the first person in years to deny him something publicly." "I denied him the right to disrespect us," Elena corrected gently. A brief, unexpected smile touched Victor's mouth. "Precisely." The tension in the room began to morph, from anticipation of conflict into something else entirely. "I did not come here for retaliation," Victor said clearly enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "I came to extend an invitation." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "I am launching a new international hospitality division under the Volkov Group," he explained. "Luxury resorts. High-profile clientele. Operations in cities where discretion and leadership are paramount." Elena blinked. "And what does that have to do with me?" "I require someone who understands boundaries," Victor replied. "Someone who values integrity over intimidation. My board suggests experienced executives. I prefer proven character." Adrian finally spoke, his voice quieter than Elena had ever heard it. "You were right last night," he said, meeting her eyes directly. "I thought my name excused my behavior. It doesn't." The sincerity in his tone shifted something subtle inside her, not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. Victor gestured toward the marina. "My helicopter is prepared to take us to our headquarters. I would like you to join us for a discussion. No obligation. No immediate decision." The audacity of the offer hung in the air. Elena glanced around the restaurant, the polished wood floors, the servers who had become her second family, the windows overlooking the water she'd grown accustomed to watching at closing time. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Because you are not impressed by power," Victor answered. "And that makes you uniquely qualified to manage those who are intoxicated by it." Silence followed, thick with possibility. Mia stepped closer, whispering, "You should go." Elena hesitated only a moment longer. Then she looked back at Victor. "One ride," she said. "To talk. That is all I request." As they stepped outside, the late afternoon sun reflected off the water in blinding shards of light. The helicopter blades began to spin again, wind whipping Elena's hair free from its bun. The force of it felt symbolic, disruptive, exhilarating, dangerous. Adrian held the door open for her this time, a quiet gesture that carried more humility than any apology speech could. Inside, the cabin smelled of leather and aviation fuel. It was sleek, controlled, insulated from the noise of the world below. As the helicopter lifted off, the harbor flame shrank. Beneath them, the marina turning into a delicate grid of docks and glittering water. Elena pressed her hand lightly against the window. Yesterday, she had defended her team from a billionaire's arrogance. Today, she was rising above the city with his father, not as a victim of consequence, but as a candidate for transformation. And for the first time since the confrontation, she allowed herself to wonder whether standing her ground had not just protected her present, but launched her into an entirely different future.